Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Nigel Bajos, and today I wanted to give you 4 suggestions on cameras if you are on a really tight budget. And these are 4 cameras that cost under $400. So if you're just trying to get your first camera and you don't need 4K, you can deal with 1080p. These are 4 cameras that I think that you should look into. So I'm going to start from the cheapest camera to the more expensive camera up near $400. Now the first one I'm going to suggest, and this one is super cheap, it's actually a camera that I covered in the most watched video here on this channel, and that is the Canon EOS M. Now I know a lot of you guys have watched that video. It's got like, I don't know, 400 something thousand views, but I made that video a few years ago, and I really like the Canon EOS M because it was cheap even back then, and it's even cheaper now. I've seen it for like $125 to $145 for the body. Sometimes they'll even throw in a lens. Obviously these are used prices on eBay, but that's really cheap if you're just on a really tight budget and you're trying to get your first camera. So some of the cool things about the Canon EOS M is, although it does suffer from, a softer image that's shared with pretty much every other Canon RedBubble camera in the lineup, it can be hacked with Magic Lantern. You can do time lapses, which I thought was really cool. You can have your audio meters. And one other thing that's cool about Canon cameras is that you can install custom picture profiles like CineStyle, which is free, Vision Color, which will cost you some, and then Andrew Reed's C-Log. I'm pretty sure as long as it's the same kind of a picture profile as CineStyle, you can install that on your little Canon EOS M and get like a pseudo C-Log look in your little Canon EOS M. And then, as far as lenses go, you can pretty much adapt any lens to the Canon EOS M. One thing that I would suggest if you're trying to save some money is look into the Canon FD glass, and then just get a really cheap Canon FD to EOS M adapter, and you can get some pretty fast glass, like a 50mm f1.4. The 35 to 105 f3.5 is another really good lens. It gives you a really big focal range, and it's f3.5, which isn't the fastest, but it maintains that f3.5 all throughout the range, which is pretty cool, and it has a macro switch, so that might be an option. There's also a bunch of 28mm and different focal lengths that you can mess around with, but Canon FD lenses are really cheap on eBay. You can find them for under $100. So I would definitely look into that. I used the Canon EOS M and I got some of my favorite images with that little camera, and it's so small and it's so cheap that even if I did break one, I'll just be like, okay, I'll just go buy another one. So yeah, that's the first one, and it is the cheapest. It's the Canon EOS M Original. So the second camera that I'm going to suggest is actually a camera that came out before the Canon EOS M, and that is the Panasonic GH1. Now this camera can be had anywhere from like $120 to $200. So it varies on eBay used, obviously, because this is a really old camera. But this camera was the first installment of the GH series. It has a micro four thirds sensor, and what's cool about this camera is that it can be hacked. So you can hack it and shoot in higher bit rates, and it doesn't give you any of the features that the Magic Lantern hack on like the Canon EOS M would give you. Like, it doesn't give you focus peaking or zebras or anything like that, or audio meters, but it lets you hack it so where you're shooting a higher bit rate than what the GH1 could originally shoot. And I actually owned this camera like a year ago and shot around with it, and it gave me some pretty good images. So the biggest downfalls with this camera is that although it does give you a much better image than the original GH1 firmware does, it still isn't the sharpest image you could possibly get. And when you hack it, it really only like ups the bit rate of your recording into AVC HD. It doesn't give you any features like focus peaking or zebras or anything like that. So that's the one downfall when you hack the GH1, is that you're just going to be getting a better image but no extra features. But this camera is really good. It has a mic jack. It is a 2.5mm mic jack, so you have to get a 2.5 to 3.5mm adapter and then plug your mic in. For the GH1, you don't have any manual audio control, but the automatic gain isn't that bad. I've plugged my Comica VM10 straight into it, and it sounds actually pretty good. That's one thing that you guys should know, is that all these cameras that I'm going to be recommending to you are going to have mic jacks, and the GH1 is no exception. So if you're trying to get into the Micro Four Thirds system, that's one that you could look into. Again, you can adapt a lot of different lenses to a GH1. You could get a focal reducer, like a Canon FD focal reducer, put some Canon FD lenses on there, and you'll get better performance out of those old FD lenses with a cheap focal reducer on there. So my third suggestion is actually one that I didn't think I would ever suggest to people to buy, but it's actually the Canon EOS M3. Now, this one came out a bit after the original EOS M. There was actually an M2, but that one only got released in like Europe, and it didn't really have very many upgrades to the original EOS M. But the EOS M3 benefits from a flip-up screen, and it has a mic jack, and it actually shoots pretty decent quality video. In fact, I've seen some EOS M3 video that looked pretty similar to a Sony a6000. So it shoots almost at the same level as like a Sony a6000, and it shoots in a .mov codec just like any of the other Canon cameras do. One thing about the EOS M3 is that it hasn't been hacked by Magic Lantern, and the reason for that is because the firmware is closer to like a PowerShot Canon camera and not necessarily like a DSLR RedBubble camera. So that's why the Magic Lantern dudes haven't been able to hack it yet. So that is a downfall, that it can't be hacked with Magic Lantern, but you do get the ability to install picture profiles to that camera as well. So that's something that's still pretty cool about Canon cameras, is that you can install picture profiles to them. And I believe it has focus peaking too. So if you get manual lenses and hook them up to the EOS M3, you should be able to see the outlined areas that are in focus. I actually have never used this camera, but I'll leave a couple links to some videos that I've seen pretty recently that were shot with the EOS M3 that kind of made me rethink that camera, and it actually looks really good. So yeah, that one can be had for about $300-ish, $250 to $300. So still a pretty good deal. You get a super 35mm sensor. Again, you can adapt pretty much any lens mount to it, and you get quality that's about as good as a Sony a6000, but with the EOS M3, you do get a mic jack, which the Sony a6000 does not have. Yeah, that's another camera that I would suggest. And it does have the flip up selfie screen. So if you're into vlogging, that might be something to consider. It has a couple of other like gimmicky features like digital image stabilization, which I would just never use. But again, if you wanted to install picture profiles or just want to get that Canon color look, the EOS M3 looks like a pretty decent option. All right, so the last camera on my list is one that probably shoots the best quality video, and I would probably argue better than the two cameras that I have. This is one that kind of like is still a favorite among a lot of Panasonic shooters, and that is the Panasonic GH2. Now this camera I've seen for anywhere from $175 to $300. So you'll probably spend the most on this camera, but this camera is pretty rad because unlike the GH1, when you hack the GH2, it becomes a freaking beast when it comes to image detail. Now, I've never actually used the GH2, but I'm gonna leave some links in the description below to some videos that are shot with hacked GH2s, and those videos look like they could have been shot with like, you know, a Blackmagic Pocket or something way higher up, but the GH2s can produce really high quality video. I think that when they are hacked with certain patches, you can shoot up to like 172 megabits per second. And that's a really, I mean, that's a lot of data being recorded. So that's even more than like my Panasonic GH3. And the cool thing about the GH2 is that the sensor on the GH2 is actually less cropped than on a Panasonic GH3. So you're getting a bigger field of view with a GH2 than you will be on a GH3. And when you hack it, it's actually going to be shooting in a higher bit rate than the Panasonic GH3. Although the Panasonic GH3 does shoot in an all-I .mov format, and the GH2, when you hack it, it'll still just shoot in AVC HD. It'll be a sharper video than the Panasonic GH3, which is pretty crazy. And again, that camera can be had for anywhere between $175 to like $300 on eBay, used obviously. That's definitely a camera that to this day can still hold up when it comes to 1080p video. And again, you put a speed booster or a focal reducer on that thing and you get some nice glass, you can shoot really, really crispy video on the Panasonic GH2. And again, the Panasonic GH2 has a mic jack, and you can control the levels manually on the GH2, which is also pretty cool. So, but yeah, the GH2 is still a great camera, even though it's super old, and I've seen a bunch of them on eBay used for under $300. So if you're into, you know, hacking a camera and, you know, getting it to perform better, I think the GH2 is still the gold standard as far as like image quality for 1080p. So anyways, that's my 4 cameras under $400, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have any other questions, you can leave them down in the comment section below. If you like this video, it'd be great if you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more content. But until next time, I will see you all later. Bye.